I'm not sure if Director Green is going to join us or not. We hope he does. This board meeting of the Board of Education for June 28th, 2022 is called to order. For tonight's meeting, any item that will be voted on has been posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tabs. The meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV Services website and on Channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight on this beautiful evening. Tonight is the last meeting of the 2021-2022 school year. Tonight's agenda includes the consideration of labor partner agreements, one with the Portland Association of Teachers and the other with the Service Employees International Union, as well as voting on our 2022 to 2027 board goals. Before I get started, I'd like to share a few reminders, although I think everybody knows this. We ask that all members of the public attending this meeting tonight treat each other, the staff, and the board with respect and do not interfere with the ability of the board to conduct its business. Those wishing to display play cards, signs, and/or banners must remain in the auditorium foyer behind the seating area and may not block any attendee's view of the proceedings. Also, please keep walkways clear and aisles clear. And in general, we'd appreciate if you just be mindful of others in the room, the words you use, and be aware of who's watching, particularly our community's children. The board will now vote on the consent agenda. Board members, if there are any items you'd like to pull for discussion, we'll set those aside for discussion and vote at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to set aside resolution 6535.
Scrolling through to find 6534. Approve the COLA for non-represented employees. Any other board would like to pull any other resolutions from the consent agenda? Okay, we'll return to that at the end of our meeting. Having a hard time getting settled in tonight. Okay. Ms. Bradshaw, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda minus resolution 6535?
So moved.
Second.
Director Lowry moves and Director Constam seconds the adoption of the consent agenda minus resolution 6535. Is there any board discussion on the consent agenda? And unfortunately, I hope that our student representative will join us later. I haven't heard from her if she's running late or just won't be here tonight. Do you happen to know?
Chair to pass, she's actually virtually.
I'm so sorry, Byrony. Thank you and welcome. So we've, Byrony?
Yes.
We have a motion on the table and a second to adopt the consent agenda, and I wanted to ask if there's any board discussion, and I'd also like to hear from you, our student representative, and welcome.
Thank you, and no, I have no comments on that. Thanks.
Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment?
No.
Okay, the board will now vote on resolution 6526 through 6534 and 6539. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. And are there any abstentions? The consent agenda minus resolution 6535 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with student representative McMahon voting.
Yes.
Great. We're going to turn now to student and public comment. Before we begin, I'd like to review our guidelines for public comment. First, the board thanks you for taking the time to attend this meeting and providing your comments. Public input informs and improves our work, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts, reflections, and/or concerns. Our responsibility as a board is to actively listen, and to that end, I would ask each of us to give our full attention to the people in front of us while they're testifying. Our board office may follow up on board-related issues raised during public testimony. And we request that complaints about individual employees please be directed to the superintendent's office as a personnel matter. If you have additional materials you'd like us to consider, you can provide those to the board office, or you can email them to public comment, all one word, at pps.net. That's public comment, all one word, at pps.net. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll hear a sound after 3 minutes, which means it's time to conclude your comments. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have anyone signed up for student or public comment?
Yes. We have Ray Leary.
Mr. Leary?
My name is Ray Leary, spelled Leary. I am president of the I Am Academy. And Madam Chair, Commissioner, Superintendent, I appreciate you granting us the time to address what we consider a critical matter. Oftentimes this term is given a different interpretation. It's one the Chinese use, and the word crises is supposed to be the same symbol for challenge and opportunity. But I think if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that the true definition of that is crises. And when we consider young black boys, particularly middle school and high school, and the challenges they face in staying safe and avoiding gun violence, we have a crisis. And we've worked very hard to try to mitigate that. And we haven't always been successful. Not in the case of Calvin Jackson, not in the case of John Marie Mans, not in the case of Seneca Alexander, who was just honored at the Roosevelt graduation in his absence. Those are the individuals we are working with and working for. And we realize that we are in a crisis, so we hoped to increase our ability to support this population by looking for ways to expand our program. Your own data reveals that the most vulnerable are middle school and high school black boys. And being in the schools, we recognize that. The poor attendance, the poor academic standing, the loss of desire to try to achieve, it is centralized in a terrible way within the community of young black boys in Portland Public Schools. Now, your data makes it clear. And one of the things we have to be careful of, when the data and the information does not support the strategic approaches, we have a problem. And if, in fact, black boys are our most vulnerable, then budgetarily that should be reflected in that. We should be able to see that priority. So when we make efforts to try to increase our ability to serve this population, we're met with resistance. We don't receive feedback. We have to wait for opportunities to talk. And in the process, the public danger is increasing every day. So what I say to you is this, is that if we're really going to serve the most vulnerable population we have, if we follow the money, will that say that? If we follow the money, will it reveal that our priority is black boys, 7th through high school, 13, 14, 15, 16? If it does, I am happy to put a muzzle on my face and not say another word in life. But I would question whether that priority is matched budgetarily with the feedback and the emphasis on public safety and gun violence among black boys. If that is in fact your priority, then let the budget reflect that and let the programming decisions reflect that. Or we allow this crisis to become more than that. It becomes permanent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Tony? Student Representative McMahon, would you like to provide your first report?
Yes, thank you. Great. So I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there in person today. When college visits call, I must answer. So I'm currently in California, but I'm still excited nonetheless to bring forward some comments today. So since this is the last board meeting of this year, I was very excited to bring forward some student achievements and some specifically DSC achievements that I think should be recognized before moving into the next year. So this year was obviously the first year in school post-COVID. And I think with that came a lot of challenges for students, but still students managed to do so much. Some of the things that were specifically asked to highlight was Lent students and their leadership in saving their school, as well as Harriet Tubman students who obviously were really advocating for their school throughout this year. Obviously, all high schools achieved so much in sports and academics, and that was specifically wanted to bring forward, as well as, the success of everyone and all the teachers coming back to school and dealing with all the challenges that came with that. As for the district student council, I was very excited to have our first in-person summit since the pandemic, which was super exciting. We had many students from all over the district, and we were really happy that we had at least 5 students from every PBS comprehensive high school, and obviously we had more, but it was super exciting to see even our charter and alternative programs also have representation at this summit. And we are really looking forward to starting DSC next year. I sent out the first welcome email to the new DSC representatives, and I'm really excited to get the DSC started for this next coming school year. So that's everything I have to report. Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for working before you start your first day. I appreciate the effort that you've put in, and it was excellent that you're hearing from the specific school communities for your advocacy. We'll move now to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to provide your last report for the school year?
I would. Thank you, Chair. We're going to bring that up. Well, good evening, everybody. Buenas tardes. It's been about 2 weeks since our community completed the 21-22 school year officially. So for my report tonight, I want to simply take this opportunity to celebrate our students, thank our hardworking and dedicated staff, and highlight just a few ways our system is already staying busy with preparations for the next school year. As we all know, this school year presented a number of challenges that we continue to confront, especially those impacts of this pandemic. I've been amazed, however, at all the ways that our school community has adapted to these challenges these past 2 years in service of our students. So it was wonderful to observe so many end-of-year school celebrations, performances, and graduation ceremonies this last month of school. Our students and now our PPS alumni have proven themselves incredibly resilient during these last few years. And our dedicated staff all together have demonstrated tremendous dedication to our students. It's because of our staff, whether they teach, keep the district clean, drive a school bus, prepare meals, work as a school or district leader, or perform other duties, that our district's core mission has continued to persevere. And in fact, preparation for the new school year has already kicked off this summer, which I'm going to share a little bit about this evening. But first, it was incredible to be back at Providence Park again this year to congratulate and honor the more than 3,000 graduates who walked across the stage this year. For many of us, this is one of the year's most memorable highlights. I'm sure it was for our directors as well, as we celebrate this important milestone in the educational careers of our students. Our graduates have earned many distinctions and an array of recognitions, including the Seal of Biliteracy, a valedictorian designation, and for one student, Kyler Lee Chen from Lincoln, being chosen to be part of the 58th class of presidential scholars. He was one of only 161 students chosen nationwide to be a part of this cohort. Our class of 2022 also includes poets like McDaniel's Nicole Jackson, this year's Versalandia first place champion, and student athletes like Kyra Lee, who was named the 2022 6A Girls Golf State Champion. This is just a small sampling of some of the recognitions of our incredibly talented students and recognitions that they have earned. And as superintendent of schools, I'm incredibly proud of every one of our students and graduates. Similarly, our educators and staff have also continued to receive accolades and recognitions for their dynamic and important work on behalf of our district students. For example, each year, On Point Credit Union recognizes outstanding educators and school projects with cash prizes, including in one case, paying the mortgage or rent of 3 teachers for an entire year, with On Point's Prize for Excellence in Education. This year, Emmanuel Aquino, an English and Spanish immersion teacher at Beaumont Middle School, won this wonderful award, so congratulations to Emmanuel. Another example is Greg Garcia, a social studies teacher at Franklin High School, who was named Oregon History Teacher of the Year by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. And Lincoln's Rebecca Eisenberg and Kim Bliss have each been selected from among competitive pools of applicants to attend prestigious study opportunities this summer, supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Center for Geography Education in Oregon, and the National Education Association. They, in addition to a number of other educators, are using this summer as opportunities to refine their teaching craft. We're proud of every one of our educators for continuing to be a steady source of inspiration for our students, each other, and our community. In just a few weeks, we will be welcoming just under 4,000 students across 25 sites who will be participating in our Summer Acceleration Academy. Our 4-week learning program will begin July 11th, and we look forward to sharing with you some highlights when we meet again in August. Directors, please let us know if you'd like to visit any one of those summer learning and enrichment sites and programs. Additionally, we're pleased to offer for a second year in a row now an incredible array of engaging opportunities for our students all summer long through partnership with our community-based partners. These enrichment activities will offer for students of all ages access to enriching academic support and activities, culturally specific learning experiences, and summer outings. We're so thankful to all of our community partners who continue to step up in service of our students. And while students get the opportunity for a summer break, many of our staff, however, will be stepping up a whole agenda of productive work and activities during the next few months. This includes providing professional development for educators, ongoing efforts to hire and recruit staff and school principals, and of course, our ongoing efforts to modernize and upgrade school buildings. We're excited to open the new Lincoln High School, and our operations team also continues to work diligently to update roofs, make seismic improvements, and make progress towards making our buildings more accessible. 2 weeks ago, we also hosted members of the Jefferson community who continue developing a comprehensive modernization plan for the school. This work will continue in earnest in August. In addition, I'm happy to report that we're closing in on filling a number of key hires for the school district. This includes 3 senior leaders that we've been looking to backfill: the currently vacant chief of schools, chief academic officer, and chief of student support service roles. These new cabinet level leaders, which we hope to announce later this week, will be joining our team's efforts as we begin a renewed focus on our core mission of raising student achievement and supporting school improvement, especially for our students of color and our underserved communities. And lastly, I'm deeply thankful to our educators who continue to dedicate time towards planning and preparation for the new school year. Last week, more than 580 K-5 educators engaged in a 3-day professional development summit where they learned about our new instructional framework and curricular adoptions. This sequence is going to be repeated again August 15th through the 17th. So as I started, I'm just simply thankful with a deep appreciation for the dedication and work of our teachers, our classified staff, and administrators this summer and all year long. So my hope is that at the same time, each of us will find some opportunities to rejuvenate this summer and engage in those activities that bring us joy. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent.
I had a question, Superintendent Guerrero. Did you, were we able to fill all the staffing positions for the Summer Acceleration Academy so that we can serve the students we expected?
We are still in active recruitment mode. So if you are an educator out there who's interested in working for 4 weeks serving our students, please check us out on pps.net. We are still looking for summer school staff. We have a backup plan. So we're hoping to not turn away any student who would like to take advantage of the programming.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other questions before we move on to board committee and conference reports? Start with Audit Committee.
We had an extremely brief virtual audit committee meeting yesterday, which was really just an update of ongoing audits. We are wrapping up our auditor is wrapping up the hardship transfer audit, excuse me. So we hope to see that report probably by the end of September at the latest. We'll have a little bit of a hiatus here for the rest of summer. And then after that, they're beginning to collect data on the Associated Student Body Funds audit. And then on deck is our English language learner audit, which will probably be one of the more complex and time consuming. And that's it. Oh, and then once we're back at it, we'll start brainstorming ideas for our slate of audit topics for next year. So if anybody's got ideas, let me know, or join in the fun at our next meeting when we have our first conversation about the 22-23 slate of topics.
Excellent, thank you. Director Hollins, Facilities and Operations.
He
Just
was
go
just
down.
looking for an excused absence, which I did not provide.
After the fact.
So Facilities and Operations Committee meeting, we talked about the Tubman Middle School updates, and we had some public comments on it. We had some good conversations about the Tubman Middle School relocation, and how do we align that with the whole Jefferson either rebuild or modernization, the Center for Black Excellence, and try to see how we get all that stuff in alignment. So we had some conversations about that. We had a Accountability Committee update, and I think we didn't have enough time for anything else, so we moved the rest of the stuff to the next meeting, which will be next month. Thank you. Or the next month? The month after next? Some next month.
There's a summer break.
Summer break.
There will
yeah.
be something next month, I
All
can
right.
guarantee it.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Policy Committee?
Thanks. You'll continue to see the work of the Policy Committee in our board meeting later on with the rescissions, revisions, first and second readings. In addition, we had a presentation and discussion about school-based fundraising, and the Office of Community Engagement presented the summary of the engagement to date. There's been two roundtables, one at Roosevelt and one at McDaniel, put together in consultation with those school community leaders. Also input, I want to thank Director Holland for suggesting community members to participate. We had a good turnout and great support for those people who participated. There also was engagement with the District Student Council and a administrative survey. And the results, the summary of the engagement is posted, but just maybe touch on just the three themes that came out. There's an interest in the collective impact model, shifting to a district-wide fundraising efforts through the Fund for PPS and decreasing school-based fundraising. There's also a theme about community building. Participants express gratitude for the opportunity to provide input and speak with their peers about these issues, and express a desire for additional opportunities for community building across schools, and then increased transparency regarding parent groups that fundraise, including how much money they raise and how they spend their dollars to benefit their schools. And there's a lot more detail, and I think it was a really good cross-section of voices. At the committee meeting, we also, there was agreement to get further input from Black families, and so that's going to happen. And I've already talked to the team that is on point for that, and that will be scheduled. So we'll be looking for input from individuals on the board if you want to suggest people to participate. And so we had a good discussion, a couple other things that we're going to start looking at in terms of like just the totality of the fundraising, not just the foundations, and getting some very specific information from staff.
Great, thank you. I would be happy to contribute names and would love to get an invitation. I would make it if I could to those listening sessions. Yes. I would promise just to listen, not talk. Thank you. Do we have anything for elections task force? Intergovernmental.
So we had had a couple of really great conversations. We had the person from Park Rose, who is the OSBA legislative person, come and chat with us, so that was lovely. And we also had a very robust conversation about the racial equity, I'm going to get this wrong, community, it's the ResJCAC is the terrible acronym that we're not going to use, which I of course just used. Racial Equity, Social Justice Community Advisory Committee. And so I had a great conversation about that. And then there was one other item on the agenda. Oh, we talked about what we can do about gun control, and especially mentioned the Lift Every Voice petition that is happening right now, and that if that does indeed become a ballot initiative, that we as a board can discuss endorsing that. And then also to think about, as the legislature comes along next year, how we can join with OSBA and other districts in dealing with what our public speaker again today mentioned is the scourge of gun violence. And we know that gun violence is responsible for the most deaths of people ages 1 to 19, and that is like the people we serve. And so how can we talked about how we as a board can be advocating for the public health of our students in this matter.
Thank you. And I know we heard from Moms Demand Action, but Lift Every Voice, for those of you who don't know, is a Black-led, mostly interfaith effort to put a ballot measure on the November ballot that addresses gun violence. So I think I'm watching their signature gathering, and they're, I think, about 30,000 signatures short of where they need to be.
I just mailed in our churches today.
Excellent. Thank you. And I see that Director Green joined us, and we're going to spare you giving an update at this meeting, but you can talk at the next meeting. I think I understand you're on the road, and I think appreciate you being here.
Chair DePass.
Yes.
Or Director Green, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say thank you for passing me.
Chair DePass also just wanted to let people know that we had our meeting of the Comprehensive Planning Committee for Jefferson High School, which you were there as well. We both sit on that committee. So that was the second go round. So it was really just hearing from the people in the room about what their goals and visions and histories are for Jefferson. And then we won't meet again until the end of August. And then after that, we'll be meeting every 2 weeks, and a pretty intense schedule until we get to the end of November, at which point we're going to be ready to translate all those efforts into our design documents. So there are a lot of really pressing questions that intersect with other efforts of the district, including the relocation of Tubman and the how we're going to manifest our Center for Black Student Excellence. But we just had a really great group of community members there, and really rich conversation.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, it was a really nice kind of values setting, and it feels very grassroots, and really people want to be there, and so thank you to staff for making that happen. And yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of each other on that. Our next item is the PAT collective bargaining agreement. Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to introduce this item?
I would. I'd actually like to introduce Ms. Genevieve Rowe, our Senior Director of Employee and Labor Relations, up to talk about this very important agreement before you tonight.
Thank you. It is very important. And Angela, the incoming PAT president, is virtually with us
Excellent.
tonight. Yes, so she will speak in just a minute here. So before you tonight, good evening, directors, student representative and Superintendent Guerrero. Before you tonight is a 1-year contract extension between PPS and PAT. It represents our very important group of educators, social workers, school psychologists, counselors, SLPs, and many others. The teachers union represents the largest group of employees at PPS. This group of educators is responsible for growing and developing approximately 45,000 students across the city. I think this phrase has been said 1,000 times. This has been one of the most challenging years we've seen, but it truly, truly has. And our educators have demonstrated flexibility in a time of great uncertainty. The extension provides stability as we move into a new school year with a new president, Angela, which we're excited about. We're proud to put this before you. The 1-year extension recognizes the work that our educators did in the past year with a 4% COLA and a one-time retention stipend of $500. We are grateful for the work of all of our educators over the past year and look forward to starting the year off with a current contract.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Are you President Bonilla?
Hello, not quite yet. I still have a couple days. July 1st.
July 1st. Congratulations.
Thank you. Hello, Chair DePass, Vice Chair Scott, board directors. I hope you can forgive me for not being able to attend in person. I'm currently in Chicago for our National Education Association Representative Assembly, as well as a Council of Urban Education Associations. So PAT really hoped to go into full successor bargaining this year with PPS, but we had the privilege of being able to step back and allow our union partners, SEIU and ATU, kind of take the lead and work towards a bargain for their members. I know y'all heard from them previously that they were fighting for livable wages in the city, and they were able to settle a contract. So we're very grateful that we were able to kind of step back and give them that spotlight. Our members ratified this agreement to extend our current contract for 1 more year with a 4% COLA and a $500 one-time stipend. With inflation nationally running at around 8% this year alone, we know that 4% COLA is only a small step towards the compensation that professional educators need to keep up with the rising costs, especially in our city, and to be able to live and afford to live in our community. So I'm just very happy that we were able to settle something before the end of the school year and look forward to October 15th, which is the date that we will start bargaining for our successor bargain for the next year, and be able to work towards creating great public schools for all students. Our members want to do right by kids. We had, as Genevieve said, a very, very difficult year. And we appreciate all the accolades and respect, and we want to make sure that respect and acknowledgement is reflected in our paychecks and in our working conditions. We know that it's crucial that our district offers compensation at least on par with other school districts in the area in order to retain our experienced educators and attract the diverse and talented educators we need to fully staff our schools. So this really represents a small step in that direction. So hopefully y'all vote to approve this settlement. And I just want to thank PAT and PPS staff for working diligently to get this COLA of 4%, the stipend of $500. And here's hoping that next year's negotiation to attain, we can attain a COLA and working conditions that will attract and keep our strongest educators as we compete with other districts, because our students deserve the best. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us from Chicago. Appreciate it. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 6536, Portland Association of Teachers and School District 1J, Multnomah County, Oregon, ratification of the collective bargaining agreement 2022-2023?
So moved.
Second.
Director Brim Edwards moves and Director Scott seconds the adoption of Resolution 6536. Is there any board discussion?
I just want to thank President-elect Bonilla for a very visible sense of partnership and constructive collaboration. And I just really appreciate the tone that you bring to this work and your leadership, and look forward to really problem solving together in the fall to address a lot of important issues.
I also want to just thank teachers. Teachers are the backbone of the system. And I just want to express my personal appreciation for teachers in this moment.
I would also like to do that as well. Obviously, the students are who benefit directly from teachers. And I just want to say we all have been in the building. We see how hard you guys work, and we really are appreciative of everything that you guys do. Sorry.
I will echo the comments of my three colleagues around that, and thank teachers for this year of service. It was very, very challenging, and I'm glad we were able to recognize them in this way.
Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment?
No.
The board will now vote on Resolution 6536, Portland Association of Teachers and School District Number 1J, Multnomah County, Oregon, ratification of the collective bargaining agreement 2022-2023. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed, please indicate by. Thank you, Director Green, coming in from the peanut gallery. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. And are there any abstentions? Resolution 6536 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative McMahon voting.
Yes.
Great. That feels really good to have gotten that across the finish line. Yes, yes. It's a clapping moment. You can cheer. We'll see you on October 15th.
Yeah.
SEIU Collective Bargaining Agreement. Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to introduce this next item?
Thank you, directors, and congratulations, President Bonilla. Well, no less, I'm also extremely pleased that we have an agreement with our Service Employees International Union Labor Group before you today, without whose tireless efforts we would not be able to operate as a school system. So a huge appreciation for a group that represents nutrition service, food service assistants, lead food service assistants, custodians, and head custodians. Genevieve is going to be speaking a little bit more about this agreement as well. I know she's being joined by our Chief Operating Officer as well.
Yes. Thank you. With me is Dan Young, who is the COO and also represents both of these groups, the custodian and the nutrition services. Or actually, that might not be right. At this moment. Semantics. SEIU, as you all know, we have just finished bargaining a one-year contract extension for them as well. This is also another incredibly important group of custodians and nutrition services employees that provide clean learning environments and meals for our students. We're proud to offer what we believe are the highest salary increases in the history of our negotiations with SEIU. In the agreement, nutrition services leads will receive a 7% increase, and nutrition services assistants are going to receive a 19.8% increase. All nutrition services employees will also receive a one-time $500 bonus. Custodians will receive a 15% market adjustment and an increase to the percentages between their steps. from 2.5% to 3.4%. We believe that the increased wages will put PPS in a stronger position to recruit and retain employees that provide these critical services to our students. I do have with me Amy, Sylvia, and Greg are going to speak on behalf of SEIU whenever we're ready for that.
Excellent.
Do you guys want to come? We're ready when you're ready.
I didn't know if he was talking.
Okay. Hello. Good evening.
Welcome.
I would like to thank you for listening to our desperate pleas for competitive wages, especially Director Constam. I feel like you really listened, and as someone in an often overlooked group, it was nice to finally feel like I was heard. Well, we were heard, and I think this is a really great first step in making a better relationship between us and management and everybody. With that being said, we still have a lot to accomplish. Our working conditions remain poor, our buildings are short-staffed, and while these raises will help some with hiring and retaining people, it doesn't address concerns related to worker safety, medical leave, disaster pay, a whole bunch other things. Specifically, I wanted to bring up one thing. We had a letter of agreement for, what's it called? Isolation and quarantine that expires in 2 days. And we think that it's really important to extend this. Right now, people have to decide between taking a sick leave, between choosing to provide for their family or exposing the school community to COVID. So I think it's really important that this gets extended. I just want to say, please continue listening and hearing our concerns. I do look forward to continuing to better our relationship with management. I think this was a really great first step, so thank you.
You got off easy. My name is Greg Myers. I'm the head custodian for Portland Public Schools. For the record, MEYERS. I love our intimate setting tonight. I was shocked when I walked in the door and all the chairs were stacked up against the wall back there. I just have a short statement for you. I'm going to read because I've been sick, so this got written very shortly. So normally I rehearse it and I'd have more time, so I'm just going to read off it. As the custodial co-chair of the SIU 503 Local 140, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak tonight. I would like to thank the district and the board for listening to our concerns over the past year. I'm sure you guys are tired of seeing purple shirts coming up here telling you this, and this, but we do appreciate that you all listen to us. Listening and being recognized is a huge thing in our society. Over the past year, we've still have an ongoing crisis, not just in our department, but throughout the whole district. I think you heard it echoed by the new head of the PAT. All of our departments are struggling to, number one, hire people, number two, retain them. It's a mystery, a puzzle that we all need to figure out. What do we need to do? What's the magic combination to get people in the door and what we can do to keep them there to sustain the job? Authorizing the one-year monetary contract extension between the district and the union is a crucial first step in addressing staffing issues. If we don't have the money to pay the people, I am one of the people that does interviews for new hires for the custodial. If we don't have the money to offer them, they aren't walking in the door to even make it to an interview or to spend the time to actually get their feet in a school. So it is a critical step. I would like to thank the district and the board for doing that for us. It's the first tool that we need to figure out how we can get our staffing back up. I would also like to thank the district, the board, for raising wages. One, to make our union members' lives a bit more livable. Everybody is really feeling the pinch because of the inflation that nobody expected to happen. So in good times, this would be a tremendous raise for us. It is a tremendous raise for us. The reality is, because of the economy, it's going to help us get by. But I would say by next February, when we sit down to the table to negotiate a contract, I'd hope the inflation rate might lower or top itself off, but the economic situation is going to be unknown. So this is a great start for us, and we do appreciate it gratefully. I use the term first step because there are other issues that still need to be addressed regarding how our system functions in relation to the world that we're living in today. Just my personal feeling is that our department is still working in the 1970s and 80s, and we really need to move forward. We need to come up with innovative ways to not only get people to come to work for us, but to sustain them and retain them and keep them here and make it a career job. That's vital. If you can't keep somebody, give them a reason to stay for a career, our turnover will just keep going. Average is 3 to 5 years. They're out the door. They find something else to do. We want to keep those people 10, 15, 20 years. We want them to stay and retire. One thing that the PPS can do now is have an APPA do an evaluation of our buildings if possible. APPA is the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. They are basically an organization that goes around and does independent reviews of physical plants. They do colleges, they come in and give you a fact-based baseline of where you actually stand, where your buildings are, what condition they're in. I have actually been in contact with them, and I'm waiting to hear back from them to have a representative so we can make our first contact with them to find out if it is something that is feasible for the district to do in cooperation with facilities. This would give us a professional, independent assessment of the shape of our buildings and a guideline. More importantly, it would give us a guideline how to properly staff our buildings once we do hopefully get people coming through the door. That's what the money was all about. Well, once we get the people in the door, we really need a clear and direct path of how we staff our buildings. Right now, we rob Peter to pay Paul. You guys have all heard the stories. We have to send bodies where we need bodies. That's the way it is. But if the system works the way that we're hoping it will, we really need to have in place a system that allocates those people correctly, which we're still working on the same system that we've worked on for 30 years. How many square feet is your building? That's how many people you get. Doesn't take in effect that, during COVID, we had extra jobs we had to do. We had to sanitize. There are many factors that go in that are not going to be, you can't have it just based on 360,000 square feet. It doesn't work. Not in this world we're in anymore. We're going to deal with this stuff. We've got other issues too. Remember the forest fires? We're going to have forest fires again. We worked through that. We had terrible air quality. There's a lot of issues that are going to come up. There are things that we've never had to deal with in the past, but we need to work together to be able to do that. And by the way, the APPA, those are the people that gave us moderately dingy. That is one of the 5 steps. That is their list. That's where that comes from. So we're all familiar with at least that part of the APPA. If the district is truly committed to maintaining these buildings, both the brand new ones that we're getting ready to open and the older buildings, we feel that a professional evaluation is important, and it needs to be something that's independent because, once again, we feel that we need different eyes looking in on what we do instead of the people that are internal to it. It always helps to have a fresh perspective of what is actually going on. Our contract negotiations begin in February after that's what we've agreed to during that 1-year extension. We have several proposals that we are going to put on the table that directly deal with recruitment and retention so we can keep our schools safe and healthy. The money part is the first step, but we do have a lot of things that need to be discussed. Our system needs to be streamlined, and there needs to be some reevaluation about how we go doing things. So kind of in keeping with what everybody said, my final message I'd like to leave you with tonight is that of cooperation. Amy kind of hit on that, and so did the new president of the PAT. The history of our union and the district has been a combative one. As long as I've been here for 16 years, and look where it's gotten us. It's gotten us nowhere. Here we sit in a situation where we're trying to drag ourselves up out of the hole to figure out how we can fix it. The current elected union officers from both custodial and nutrition services, we all have agreed that we feel the only way that we can solve a lot of these issues confronting us is to work together. I know it sounds idealistic, but the other way hasn't worked, and we need to try something different. So that is not to say that there won't be differences between us. There's always going to be differences, but we're really hoping that we can all stay focused on a larger vision of where we need to go. We need to take that momentum from this contract extension, and we need to keep moving forward, or we're just going to keep repeating the same problems that we've had for the last 16 years. That's basically, if as long as I'm in this position in this union, that is my approach. I'm not going to combat. I want to cooperate. I want us all to be able to work together to solve the problem. And honestly, that's our job. That's your guys' job. That's our job. That's everybody's job that gets a paycheck from the Portland Public Schools. It's our job to figure out and solve the problems so the system works. So, and starting in February when we sit down with the district, we're going to negotiate ways to hopefully solve that problem. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I did not get your last names, but Amy and Greg, I really appreciate you showing up and advocating for your members. And thanks for taking the time out.
Tell Jason thanks for his leadership too along the way.
So thank you again. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 6540, Service Employees International Union and School District Number 1J, Multnomah County, Oregon, ratification of the Collective Bargaining Agreement 2022-2023?
So moved.
Second.
Director Brim Edwards moves and Director Constam seconds the adoption of Resolution 6540. Is there any board discussion?
I want to speak to something I observed this past year when I visited schools. So we all know what the SEIU team did throughout the pandemic to keep our schools going, to keep our kids fed, our schools clean and healthy. But when I dropped into schools, I always like trying to stop by the cafeteria and usually run into the custodians, and just the spirit that they bring about the love they have for their school community and just wanting to take care of it and support their students is always so positive. I mean, there's never a day that I go into, so the lunch line as everybody's getting ready, just like the happiness that they are and the work that they're doing on behalf of our students and the engagement they have with their school communities. I just want to call that out. And even on the last day of school, I was at Irvington, and the custodian there has been doing double duty, and still like huge smile on her face, not just doing her job, but also being really a part of the school community. So I just want to call that out because it's more than the jobs that are in your job description. So thank you.
Can say the same for the lunch ladies. They will not let you leave a building without eating, even if you just ate at the last school. You have to accept the lunch.
So now let's all go out there and recruit. I ran by a bench this morning, but maybe we can do more than that. Recruiting for custodians.
Thank you. I'm a little bit lost in my script. Thank you. So we're now ready to vote. We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 6540. All those in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
Director Lowry. All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Resolution 6540 is approved by a vote of 7-0. I believe did I hear Director Green? With student,
Yes, you heard me say yes.
Thank you. With Student Representative McMahon officially voting
Yes.
great. Thank you. Well, our next topic is the resolution to adopt board goals. So we have an opportunity now to set our goals for the next 5 years. Last week, staff shared their recommendations for goal metrics to measure closing the persistent gaps between students of color and their white peers. Following that discussion, some of us reflected in the language of the goals we've agreed upon and may have had some additional revisions to be made. Before Director Holland shares his proposed amendment, I'd like to turn it to Superintendent Guerrero for his thoughts.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple. First of all, we as staff really appreciated the conversation that directors had at last week's work session. I think the one thing that I think unequivocally we can all agree on is that the gaps that we observe, many of which have been persistent, the gaps that we see in student performance along the lines of race in particular, we talked about them being generational, unacceptable, and really quite at odds with our belief that all students, every student, can learn. So I think we'll have a discussion, I know, on how we quantify some performance goals, but I think we'd all agree that our goal remains to eliminate those gaps in opportunity and outcomes between students of color and their white peers in particular. We're very committed to accelerating our work, to really identifying those high leverage strategies that are going to continue to narrow those opportunity and outcome gaps for each of the academic milestones, for the preparation that I think we want to see our graduating high school students have, rates that continue to make incremental improvement, but we want 100% of our students to have that opportunity to walk across the stage, as we saw pictures of earlier today. Well, for backup here tonight, we do have Dr. Renard Adams joining us here remotely tonight, our Chief of Research Assessment and Accountability, to offer some of his thinking on some of the recommendations that we have begun to see, and I know the board's going to engage in a further conversation as well. So good evening, Dr. Adams.
Good evening, Superintendent. Good evening, Board Directors and Student Representative McMahon. As the Superintendent said, we very much appreciated the conversation last meeting at the work session and the thinking that many board members have made into the proposed board goals. And so I don't have much to add other than to say that I've had an opportunity to review all of these suggested amendments and revisions, and I'm in agreement with them. I think they make really good sense. I appreciate Director Holland's really pushing us to think about completely eliminating the gap and not just cutting it in half. I also respect Director Brim Edwards' desire to really still hear us talk about post-secondary readiness as a part of one of our indicators, and we're happy to do so, and that is also captured in the revisions. And so with that, I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Adams. And Director Holland, did you want to speak to your proposed amendments, with a plural? Or your rationale, or your thinking.
I guess they kind of mentioned it, when we're talking about the eliminating the achievement gap. My thing is just words are really important, and so making sure that's intentional and clear in our goals. That's kind of where I was going for with that. But besides that,
did you have anything to add?
No. Well, actually, yes. Not to add to that, but just to make a general comment about sort of going forward. I do like that these are based on proficiency because I believe we're going to keep an eye on growth, but that proficiency is, I think, what when parents send their students to PPS, that's what what they're looking for is that their students are able to do grade level work. And so I'm delighted about that shift. Again, we need to keep our eye on growth, but look for that. For the high school measurements, I do think it would be good for us either to hear from staff or to have a board discussion about the diversity of what's happening in our high schools relating to grading, relating to expectations for graduation, and then what our expectations are, what a PPS diploma means. And I'm hopeful that we'll amend the resolution to include a continued reporting on the indicators, but also to look deeper to the potential disparities that may exist across our schools, whether they offer dual credit, advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and what the CTE offerings are, so that, again, with the focus on, what is the value of a PPS diploma, and that it hopefully has the same high standards and sends the same message no matter what high school you graduated from. So I think that's another conversation for us to have. We touched upon it briefly when we talked about the diploma requirements, but that was mainly to fix a statutory change in our policy. And I think it would be good for a fresh look, since we have a aggressive and ambitious goal.
Yeah, I want to just appreciate both of you, Director Hollins, for pushing us to use our language to say what we mean and be really clear about it. I think that helps the superintendent as well. It sends it's a very clear language. And I think a conversation about the rigor across the district, we would hope that the expectations are high and equal across high schools in our district. So we heard that there's one that doesn't give D's out, for instance, and so we want to make sure that the grading is happening and that the rigor and the expectations are very high across the district.
My 12-year-old self, my 14-year-old self wanted to know which high school that was.
Yes, my 14-year-old self was going to a school that didn't have grades, so it wasn't a concern.
So I did want to mention Bryony, because she made some really strong points at that conversation. And so I wanted to really give her kudos for really speaking her truth and giving her opinion about requirements and standards and setting the bar high. I really appreciated that. And I actually went a little step further when she did that. I put out social media survey. I didn't put it out, I had my kids put it out about that. And we got responses from college kids, from Prairie View University, Tuskegee, Howard, University of Oregon. And I was surprised of some of the responses I got back as far as, if we have higher expectations, how would that affect them reaching those expectations? Mm-hmm. So I will be bringing that. I'm still gathering in the last 3 days. I've probably got 40 responses, which was really interesting. So I'm gonna try to put that stuff together. And some high schools too, from Grant and I don't want to say Central, but Central as well. But got some of those reports. So I'm gonna try to put that together to kind of go further in where Bronny was saying as far as if we have high expectations, their thoughts on reaching those expectations.
I appreciate you in the moment too. Did you have some comments, Student Representative McMahon?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. I really appreciate it. That was very complimentary. I also think just looking at these board goals, I'm very excited to be able to communicate them really well with the public. This was something that we kind of touched on as well, but a lot of the metrics that we're looking at, I don't think students really know, are kind of what we base these huge goals off of. And I think that the more that we can report it to the community and the more students are aware of the importance of putting an effort into these tests and into, showing the progress that we're making, I think is going to be really important in seeing accurate results and being able to meet our goals. So I'm also really excited to be able to share these board goals and to really engage the community in trying to push forward how we solve them and how we put in the strategy to make them work.
So
Thank
Chair
you.
DePass, just
Yes.
to add on to that, so, one of the most important homework assignments that an elected school board has is to identify these board goals. So I'm glad that you've really sort of engaged in this conversation. It's important because it brings clarity to me as superintendent, and I welcome these kinds of academic milestones. They've always been the ones that sort of drive and motivate sort of where we place our attention. But I think to our student rep's point, it also brings clarity to the broader community, right? And why that's important at this point in time is because we're going to be engaging in some really difficult conversations, and they're more or less challenging depending on how clear we are on which investments are the high leverage strategies to obtain these goals. So we invest in a lot of important work. We spend a lot of time and a lot of important conversations, but they're not always a direct through line to achieving these goals. So I welcome these goals, and I'm gonna be citing them when it comes down to our conversations around which ones, to the point we heard earlier from our public comment, are actually gonna create that counter narrative for our Black and Native students. So thank you for being clear about these, because I think we're gonna make some posters or something.
Superintendent, I think that's a really, really important point. So we, as a board and as a district, have work to do after passing these goals, not just in terms of how we increase achievement, but how do we communicate with the public about what those strategies are, what are the puzzle pieces that we are betting on to get us there. And as we've seen in the budget process, it's not always intuitive to parents and to the public. A lot of things that we hold dear are not actually the most effective levers that we have if we're being really laser focused on student achievement. So I think it's important for us to be open and explicit about those conversations with the public. And then the other piece of that is I really look forward to, as a board, our regular engagement and monitoring of our progress on these initiatives, because this is the most important work that we do, and oftentimes we don't spend enough time in our board meetings talking about it, looking at the data, evaluating the strategies, asking you whether we need to reset a course, and that's why we're here. So I think we likely have a good governance geek coming in as our leader in the next school year, and that will serve us well as Director Holland, who's just so incredibly focused and committed to this. So we need to hold ourselves responsible for that, and I look forward to it.
We look forward to those ongoing quarterly data reviews. I know Dr. Adams does, and certainly in engaging our school leaders with those conversations. But if we do this work well, we should, under each of these goals, have a very clearly listed set of strategies. And if things aren't on that page, then we got to question what we're doing with our resources.
And it isn't, it's just, I think this is such an important point, and it isn't always clear. I mean, little things like on tonight's consent agenda, a jump start day for, 9th grade and 6th grade. That's critical. Some of our partnerships and our contracts for social emotional well-being for our students, that's critical, or our students can't learn, keeping them fed, having enough nutrition service workers to make sure that our lunchrooms operate effectively. That's part of being able to learn too. So, all these pieces that seem like they're just business as usual should be, and I think are, lining up to support these audacious goals that we have.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the alliterative new nickname. That'll be fun. No, I'm excited about these. And I think, watching the evolution, I think, we set good goals in 2018 that form the basis of this. I think when we look back, there's really good reasons for, during the pandemic and some of the pause, but even the fact that we didn't make progress and we can explain it still is not okay. And I know the superintendent shares that view as well. And I think coming back and revisiting these and Director Holland's, your amendments here are really exciting for me, because I think what we heard is, look, with these strategies in place, this is what we think we can accomplish. And what you really brought to the conversation is, but where are we headed? And let's talk about that. Let's reframe it as where we want to end up. And I think, putting in the yearly goals, there is a caution there. And Superintendent, you have said it's not always linear. So I think we need to be ready as a board, to think about that. But I think saying, look, this is what we need to be achieving every year, and that's what we're going to drive to, is really important. I think the disaggregation is really important. So I'm excited about these goals, and I'm excited to see progress. And I think I hope next year we really are talking about how we're achieving these, how we're staying on the path. And again, maybe we'll need to make some tweaks here and there, and maybe we'll make some big changes, but this will be our driving focus for that. So thank you.
I just want to echo that too. I'm really interested in learning more about the strategies that you'll be proposing to reach those goals. And what I like most about this fine point on our goals is that not only it gives us the opportunity to communicate to the public, but it's a really clear, when we have to make trade-offs with a finite budget, it makes clear where we need to make those trade-offs. And I think that'll be, I feel like the board being on the same page is really big right now in the moment. And I feel really ready to support this, really appreciate the Directors Holland and Brim Edwards for your inputs and into the amendments and to making the improvements continually for us, modeling that continuous improvement.
I have one more thing to add, but
It's fine. No, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that I don't want to, we're talking a lot about the strategies, which are important. There also may be some things that the board will need to do, and Superintendent, we're really going to rely on you to bring those forward. So if these are, changes that we need in state law or state funding or somehow operationally things that you'll need the board's support to do, I really want to make sure you don't hesitate to bring those forward and say, I'm doing everything I can, but board, I need you to take some politically challenging votes, or go out there and make some speeches, or go out there and do some other things to really drive us towards these. Because again, these are jointly owned, and you are responsible for the achievement in the district of our students, but we're responsible for knocking down barriers to that achievement. So I want to make sure that we have that relationship.
I think that's absolutely right. I think the speed of acceleration in our progress towards these goals is dependent on our ability to stay and remain focused. And so, yeah, we need a coherent set of strategies. There's some things that we know we can do that are evidence-based to make progress, but we're really going to be reliant on our board members to serve as ambassadors and communicating to the broader community. These are the goals we have for our children. And so we're going to sort of make the case about why your support is going to be important as we take on what's an upcoming challenging scenario for us. As far as a limited set of revenues.
So, one of those strategies, I was just invited and offered actually 5 tickets for Black students to go to the United Negro College Fund, which I just learned about actually this year. I've heard about the fund since I was a little kid, but I just learned that, I know they're working with PPS students. They help PPS students get into any university, not just a historically Black college and university. So U of O, really wherever the students want to go. I have 5 free tickets for students. If you guys have students that you'd like to recommend, it's a luncheon. It's 2 to 5. It might seem like a long time to a teenager, but it's a great chance to expand their networks and learn more about the support they can get through high school to get them prepared to go to college. I think with that said, a little plug for the United Negro College Fund luncheon. It's a Kentucky Derby theme. It sounds like we're ready to with they could be virgin mint juleps. I haven't seen the menu. Yes. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 6538, the resolution to adopt the amended, the Portland Public Schools board goals as amended for the years 2022 through 2027.
Just a point of clarification, do we need to actually amend them? Because what was posted?
Yeah, I think we have to
Okay.
put it on the table, then amend it, right?
Okay,
So moved.
okay.
Second?
And so now do we need to have a motion to bring forward the Holland's amendment?
Amendment.
And I would like to offer an amendment to the Holland's amendment.
Okay.
So first, we have
do-
to move the Holland's
Holland's
amendment,
amendment,
which
yes.
Holland's, you should probably move it.
Do we need to vote on, we
No,
don't vote,
we've-
we just put it on the table.
And then we put
We've
the
been through
amendment
this
on top.
before.
It's like we're laying things on top of each
Okay.
other. So we're going to
So
layer
we-
the Holland's amendment on top of that.
We've got the motion on the table.
Yeah, shouldn't you move the Holland's amendment now? Because the original motion has been moved
Okay.
and
I
seconded.
just
Do I have
kind
a
of did, but then
motion?
I realized that was sort of tacky.
Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
Not
Well,
for the Holland's
Not for the,
amendment.
do I have a motion and a second to adopt the the board goals as amended? We'll call it the Holland's amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
So
Director Lowry
Yes.
moves, Director Scott seconds the adoption of the amended,
yes.
board goals.
And I would like to offer an amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
This is when all my United Methodist training comes in so well. It's a friendly amendment. So if you look at the 8th grade readiness and the high school graduation, and I so appreciate you putting the exact percentages in this, Dr. Holland, from the presentation we had from Dr. Adams, so we're really communicating clearly about our targets. I find it odd that the Asian students by dash percentage points per year on both 8th grade readiness and high school graduation, and I know you took that directly from the slide, but I think it would be more helpful, because then if I saw that, I'd be like,
What about me?
is this a typo? Like, why is this there? So I think it might be helpful to add a line that says Asian students are already on track for this goal for both 8th grade readiness and high school graduation. So we're naming that student group because we don't want to delete them because it's, especially with all the Asian hate we know has been happening, we don't want to leave that population out. But I think I would like something more clear there to explain why there's a dash.
It's a dash.
So if you would accept that, Asian students are already on track for this goal. As instead of the Asian students by dash percentage points per year. That would be my recommendation.
Friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
Chair,
Thank you for that.
all I ask is that I have a final version that's clear and unambiguous to me as your employee, so that we don't come back 6 months from now. But I thought you said, and I thought we discussed, and
We'll make sure you
okay.
have a
We're not
clear,
gonna pull the rug out from under you.
unadulterated version of the amended amendments. So you have really a clear document to work from.
So I move the Lowry amendment to the Holland's amendment to the resolution that is before us.
That's fantastic.
Second.
So, okay, so we have Lowry and we have Constam. It's getting really long here. Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment?
No.
The board will now vote on. Do we have to go backwards then? Up? Okay, thank you. I appreciate your experience here. I didn't go to Methodist camp, you can tell. The board will now vote on the friendly amendment proposed by Director Lowry and the motion by Director Lowry and the second by Director Constam to include the language around Asian students already meeting target or on track to meet the targets rather than a dash after Asian. All those in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Okay, the friendly amendment, as moved by Director Lowry and seconded by Director Constam, passes with a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative McMahon voting.
Yes.
We'll now move to the Holland's amendment. I'm naming it. Director Lowry moved and Director Scott seconded the adoption of the amendment as proposed by Director Hollands. All those in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those.
Yes.
Thank you. All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. And are there any abstentions? And Student Representative McMahon? Unofficially voting?
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, we'll move to adopt Resolution 6538 as amended. Director Scott moved, and Director Constam, if you want to hold that, seconded. Do you want to change now, or adoption of Resolution 6538? All those in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. And are there any abstentions? With Student Representative McMahon voting
Yes, sorry.
okay. The resolution 6538 passes by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative voting yes. Is approved, rather. The next thing we have, order of business, is a first reading of policy revisions and rescissions. Director Brim Edwards, would you like to introduce these items?
Director Brim Edwards, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start over again. The Policy Committee is continuing its work to revise policies and also to rescind those that don't have an urgent need to be in our policy manual, and that don't provide actual guidance on priority issues. So tonight, there's three policies up for rescissions. They are policy 8.60.010, the risk management program. It's a very short policy, and actually we don't really need it because we already on our website already have a robust description of our risk management program, so we don't need a policy to just say that we have a risk management program. In addition, the committee unanimously recommended we rescind policy 8.60.030, student transportation, which essentially says that the school district will provide transportation for our students, and then we'll execute contracts to do that. Again, a policy that's not needed for an operational task. And then the third policy that we're recommending for rescission is 8.80.015, capital projects. And again, this talks about how we award capital project contracts and what needs to be listed in the board agenda, and that's really, we don't need a policy to do that. So those policies, those are three policy rescissions. In addition, we have a policy before us for our first reading. It's the workers' compensation and self-insurance policy 8.60.022. And this is very similar to another policy that we have recently considered. Essentially, currently there is language that needs to be modernized, and also there is currently in the policy a sort of threshold for board approval, which is left over from several decades ago. So we've increased, just like the other one, we've increased the threshold from 25,000 to 75,000 for workers' compensation claims that the board would consider. There's also just a very short report that the board will get to let us identify any particular trends, but really condenses the first reading and increases the threshold. So we're not going to be considering workers' compensation claims that are at a early 2000 threshold. And those, that policy revision was also brought forward and in a unanimous recommendation from the committee. The policies will be posted on the board website, and public comment period is a minimum of 21 days. Contact information for public comment will be posted with the policy, and the board will hold a second reading of these policies on August 9th. And Madam Chair, that's it. They're just first readings.
Great. That's excellent. Okay, thank you. We have one more item then, and that's the item that was pulled from our earlier consent agenda. Unless we have any other business at this time. That was Resolution 6535. Approve the COLA for non-representative employees for fiscal year 2022-23. Director Brim Edwards, you were the one that wanted that pulled. Did you want to speak to?
Should we put it on the table?
Isn't it already on the table because it was on consent?
It was on the consent agenda.
I don't know.
What?
We need to.
I don't know.
It's on the table because it was part of a package. Okay. So it was pulled for discussion, and then I'm opening the floor for discussion.
Yes,
You're on
thank you.
mute.
If it were only that easy. And I don't really have a question, but it's more, and I want to thank Chief Delgadillo for the conversations we've had, because there was a lot of focus this spring by our school communities about the cuts that were happening in our schools. And I had asked a question early on that related to what were the central office savings that were in the budget, just as a natural question that would come up of like, how are you prioritizing things? And throughout the budget process, and I've come to have an appreciation for compliance budgeting. That it's not always as easy as just pulling out some line items, because the question I had asked is, what are the net number of new positions? And I was focused because we were in contract negotiations with labor partners, because we'd already approved the principals, sort of market adjustments, that the last group was really like the non-representative. So I was curious about this question, and actually, I still don't have the answer, but I want to, because I've had people ask me, just want to elevate the answer as I understand it as of today, because it will continue to evolve. But the answer is that we don't actually have an answer on. There's a net increase of 254 FTE overall that are not classroom teachers. But because of how we do our budgeting, it won't be, we don't know whether those are school-based or they're non-representatives or other groups. But there are 254 net new positions in the organization that aren't in schools. Do I have that? And then there's the 87 positions that were sort of swept from schools are not a net decrease, and may be filled by school positions, but you're going to give me the signal when I when I got it wrong. But then there's the 87 teaching positions, or FTE, that still are in the total FTE, but that aren't going to be filled by teachers, or that haven't been filled by teachers at this time. And I've got to say, the reason why I asked the question is, as we head into the local option discussion and another bond, the types of questions that we get is, and especially in years in which we have cuts in schools, of, so what is happening in the rest of the organization? And, I think, and I have a strong appreciation for being able to share with our community how we have prioritized, because I actually think that makes us stronger when we demonstrate, like we did with our goals tonight, what we value and what we want to get accomplished, and then how we're going to put resources against it. And I always think we need to be able to make our case with the public, and we certainly will have to with a local option. So I want to just share my appreciation and also acknowledge that we do have an increase in the FTE, that's happened over, that will go from this last year's budget to this year, and I am looking forward to the continuing conversation about how we can continue to share with that and what value those positions, whether they end up in schools or they are central functions, that they how they help accelerate our work on our goals.
Yeah, and thank you, Director Burnett-Edwards. I'll quickly chime in. As I was walking, I want to add that I think that's an important point, because we'll have roles that support school funding. They may not necessarily be teaching allocations, but there will be additional investments, whether it's, I've seen so many positions, but just thinking about all the various roles that are supporting our staff, whether it's the RESJ specialists or the additional EAs, and so it's like really that holistic look. So as we look across our FTEs, then it's being able to have that those follow-up conversations regarding, like, okay, well, from a compliance perspective, we see how it's broken down based on the information that we have from ODE to guide us in our process. But there is that subsequent follow-up, like they may not necessarily be teachers, but there's still so many more staff at our school sites.
Yeah, and how do we, and how we translate that to the community about what that means? So I'm like fully in support of the budget analysts support that you need to be able to share that, because I do think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm convinced. Well, I think our strongest thing is not to be like, hey, we can't explain where the FTE is going. I think if we're in a really strong position to be able to be just completely transparent and prioritize it.
I think a big part of it, though, I'm looking at you, Jonathan, and your team, is storytelling, because it's not exactly a mystery if you set foot in our schools, because you can see, who are all these other adults in the building in roles that we didn't used to be able to fund. And another really important factor in this conversation is how our pandemic relief funds come into play, because by design, those are not invested in positions that would not be sustainable. They're invested in supplemental, but for the most part, school-based positions, with all of our mental health workers, our social emotional supports in our schools, our interventionists, all. So I think we have a job to do in terms of storytelling, and I love that when you set foot, especially in our title schools and our CSI schools, because they're flooded with a lot of adults in the building in addition to our classroom teachers. But that's not a model that our community is that used to. And so it is on us to tell the story about who's there, what purpose do they serve, and what are they doing for our kids.
I know that we said we didn't need to move this again, but I think we pulled this before we moved the consent agenda, and I know our legal people are talking about it, but I would just feel more comfortable, because this is for staff, if we just went ahead and moved the resolution again before we voted on it.
Yeah, I think it's
just
a good
to cover dots our I's and
it didn't
cross
seem
our
like
T's.
It was on the.
So I move resolution. Was it 6353?
6535.
65. I move resolution 6535.
Second. And then continuing on that, thank you, now that it's officially on the table. Since we pulled it, I just want to take an opportunity to thank our non-represented employees. We had an opportunity tonight to thank our teachers. We had an opportunity to talk about our custodians, nutrition service workers, and I just want to thank them. Just like everybody working for schools in this year, it has been a very, very difficult year. And they had the same stresses and same issues and had to confront the same barriers that everyone else did. And I think in addition, this group of workers, to be really honest, is sometimes overlooked, is often inappropriately deprioritized by our community. And I think really just recognizing the work that all of them do, even if it's not in the classroom, is in service of what we do as a school district, which is to provide the best education we can to our students. And so this is a very well-deserved cost of living increase. I want to thank them for their really hard work this year, and I hope they feel I hope they recognize that I want to make sure the board recognizes how important they are to the overall successful functioning. The things we talk about that we want, better reporting and better communication and better hiring and more diverse staff, this is all non-represented employees doing this work. And so I just want to make sure that's said.
Thank you, Director
Yes,
Scott. I
and
think
affects
that's
storytelling. It's non-represented.
I think that's a particularly meaningful statement for me and Chief Delgadillo, because almost all of our staff are non-represented employees. They work 360 days a year. They work very hard, and it's very important for us to provide working conditions and compensation that rewards that. Same with our board office staff, also non-represented employees. So thank you for your comments.
And our principals and vice principals are
Yes,
really important there
that
too,
is
because we
correct.
know, I think that's what you're alluding to, some of that extra work in our schools that has happened over this last year, so.
And I appreciate you putting the motion on the table so we can wrap our meeting up. So we have a motion on the table to approve Resolution 6535. The resolution to approve a cost of living adjustment for non-representative employees for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
I have just an additional comment. So just building on Director Scott's comment, I do think one thing that should be looked at is currently there is a band of non-represented employees who aren't eligible for any sort of merit or step. And that seems like a miss. So they're eligible for a COLA, but it's the slice of central office non-represented employees that wouldn't get anything beside a COLA. I think it's worth having a conversation about, eventually that sends a message, and I think it's a good conversation for us to have, even though it's a small group of people. It's a group of people that we want to retain. So that's one thing. And I will just say the other thing about storytelling is one of the issues is I don't think we yet have a story to tell because of this need to, we have the increase in FTE, but it's, at least based on my conversations, we don't yet have the story of where what those are. And 24 of the new ones are non-represented employees, but it's unclear because of how the budget is set up, either what they are or that it hasn't been decided yet. Do I have that right?
I'm going to encourage you to wrap up comments.
That's it.
So we can vote on this. So we have a motion on the table to adopt Resolution 6535. It was pulled from the consent agenda. It's its own item now. We have a motion from Director Lowry and a second from Director Scott. All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 6535, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. And are there any abstentions?
I abstain, as is a conflict of interest.
Thank you. Thank you for being forthcoming. So,
Thank you for clarifying, Director Hollins. That would be a real morale buster.
Actually,
True.
I'm sorry to do this just before we adjourn. I just want to make sure that, does a director need to declare a conflict of interest prior to a vote? Is that, I'm trying to go back to our ethics training. Just before we adjourn, I want to make sure that we've given Director Hollins the best advice possible.
With the caveat that I'm representing the board, not any individual board member. But I believe he did disclose that prior to the vote.
Okay.
Didn't he?
I didn't hear it in the meeting.
I didn't hear it.
Or he were abstaining.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, yeah.
Okay, yes. It's a procedural.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
and I think
the thing is that you declared before you voted yay or nay. Or
Right.
you abstained, rather. You didn't, yeah, it's a
So, and I
non-issue.
do know it's a good thing to follow up with Gary, because I know that Scott Bailey, when he was on the board, his wife was a teacher, and he would vote on the PAT contract because the pool was so big, it wasn't considered a conflict of interest. So you might want to just check that out with Liz or whoever at a later date. But I appreciate your integrity and being clear about that on this one. Thank you.
ORS Chapter 244 provides the answer, Director Hollins.
Wow.
And,
Well-
and Scott Bailey, Dr. Bailey did have that precedent that we can look to.
Yes. Okay, the resolution is adopted by a vote of 6-0 with one abstention, with Student Representative McMahon voting
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I think we are adjourned for the evening, unless there's any other business.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.